Welcome back to the Real Texas Radio Podcast with your host, Bronan. I hope you weren't out there grabbing up all of the bread and milk for this vicious, terrible winter storm and grabbing all the toilet paper off of the shelves. What about that recession that we're supposed to be in the middle of? I'm not seeing it. I got a packed show today. I'm going to start off talking about the Dallas County judge, the feckless, terrible COVID Clay. Guess what? He's supposed to be the county's top storm and emergency manager. Well, he fled. He fled Dallas. Can you believe that? On a jet plane. And I'm also going to talk about the lackluster debate between Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, who are both kind of sort of vying to be the next U.S. Senator from Texas, but I don't really see it. And before we go ahead and jump in, if you haven't checked out my new Substack, I just published my third column. It's all about the DART, the B-leaguer DART, and the homeless, junkie, bum, criminal, vagrant, mental patient, ne'er-do-well, recidivist reprobates, who are one of the top reasons why most of us normal taxpayers don't go near it. So check out my column, which you can find if you follow me on X at RTR_Bronan, RTR_Bronan. And if you will, I kindly, graciously ask that you give me a like, you follow, subscribe, download the Real Texas Radio Podcast from wherever you stream. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right, now, you're listening to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Bronan, just a fed-up taxpayer bringing you all of your Texas, local, and national news. There is so much that I have to talk about today. I will discuss a little bit anyway, the debate between Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico for the Democrat nomination for the U.S. Senate. They met over the weekend on Saturday. It was not a very exciting debate, and I'll play some sound, but there wasn't even really any interesting sound. I mean, go figure. They both stepped over each other to prove how committed they are to dismantling ICE in one form or another. Oh, they're all in support of taxing the billionaires back into the Stone Age, which that's fine with me. But of course, they always stop short, these brilliant Democrats, of saying, well, we're going to collect so much tax money from these billionaires that we're going to be able to cut back significantly, scale back taxes for anybody with a job, anybody who's in the $150,000 per year tax bracket. No, they never say that. And in fact, Jasmine Crockett actually said she would like to roll back the Trump tax cuts of 2017 and increase taxes for working people. So it wasn't long after that I decided I was just going to tune out of the debate, the so-called debate with the two buddies on the stage. Ugh. In any case, I want to really talk about Judge COVID Clay Jenkins here in Dallas. Well, on Friday of the terrible, horrific storm, I hope you got your milk and bread and your toilet paper. Well, he was photographed on a flight.
You ain't talking about me, guys. It's this kind of judge. You ain't talking about this kind of judge.
Oh, yes, we are, COVID Clay. We're talking about you. COVID Clay, the nearing elderly Dallas County judge, was spotted boarding a flight with his twin children, who were young enough to be his grandchildren, with his second wife, I believe. And they're flying to Costa Rica on Friday. Now they're in Costa Rica, presumably on a beach in the sun. Now, this is a problem for a number of reasons. Number one, the county judge position, a chief responsibility in their role, is storm and disaster management. And COVID Clay, of course, he thought he was going to be really slick. He thought that he was going to be able to pull off what Democrats and really all politicians before him have tried to pull off, which is sneaking away on vacation undercover and not getting busted, right? Michael Bloomberg, he tried to do it when he was the mayor of New York City, and he was sneaking away basically every weekend to go play golf at his mansion in the Bahamas. At least it was him paying for his own private plane. I think he owns a private plane. He's worth about 10 million bucks. But there happened to be a blizzard in New York, and he was stuck in the Bahamas. Poor him. And that didn't go over well. And of course, the real problem for COVID Clay is that when Ted Cruz, back in the terrible freeze of 2021, when the power grid here in Texas failed, well, COVID Clay, he had strong words for FLEES Cruz. And essentially, you need to be here on the ground. You should be here, Ted Cruz, because, COVID Clay, he's a good Democrat. He's a white male pandering Gavin Newsom wannabe. And the tweets that he has been pushing out about, this is who to call if you have a problem in the storm. And I don't know who is running his X account. I'm sure he's got some staff, but he claims, that he was totally prepared for the storm in advance. His staff is completely prepared. So it's completely fine that he has gone off, flown away to Costa Rica.
If I wasn't reading this shit, I wouldn't believe it.
I know. It's totally ridiculous.
You make more damn excuses.
Yeah. So he's got all these excuses. And, COVID Clay Jenkins, he's been the county judge for, I think, like 15 years or so in Dallas, and he's going to be running again. He filed his paperwork. He's running again. I haven't really read much or seen much on social media about any challengers, Democrat or Republican. You might remember in the last cycle, what was her name? Lauren somebody. She was the Republican challenger against COVID Clay. And I was hopeful. I was definitely hopeful. She and her husband, I think they own a barber shop or chain or some kind of a male grooming chain. And she was a flawed candidate. I think her biggest flaw, in my opinion, one of them, aside from having the misfortune of being a Republican in very blue Dallas and Dallas County, is the fact that during the COVID hoax, farce, nonsense scam, she took out, I think, something like $800,000 in PPP loans for her business. And, I'm very critical here of the PPP loans. COVID Clay Jenkins himself took out PPP loans for his law firm, despite being an extremely wealthy lawyer and a resident of Highland Park, one of the most exclusive neighborhoods or communities in the state of Texas. So I was very critical, but it was really hard to promote a candidate like Lauren, pardon me for getting her last name, because she was also taking these PPP loans. I don't know, legitimate or not. I had a real problem with an elected sitting politician taking PPP loans when they're already a multi-millionaire. I thought that was really disgusting. But the biggest problem with COVID Clay is COVID, and that's why I really have no tolerance for this guy. He was one of the worst. He was a clergyman in the church of COVIDtology. He was sickening, and I was just pulling some old cuts of COVID Clay going back to 2021. This was August 2021, when this was already months after, like 4 or 5 months after Governor Abbott of Texas declared, after a full year of the hoax, as if we didn't know that it was all a hoax and it was just a scam to keep printing money up and giving it out to people who don't work, giving it out to millionaires like COVID Clay. It was done. We were done. As if we didn't know about 8 weeks after the hoax was officially declared in March 2020, after the St. George Floyd, morass, when all of these Democrats who told us the worst thing in the world you could do, including COVID Clay, the worst thing that you could do for your health, for your physical health, if you wanted to kill your mother, grandmother, nurse, every other person you came into contact with, go out and get into a group activity. And then George Floyd, the saint, dies, and then they completely reversed course and said that it was fine to go out. If you were going to protest or riot or loot for George Floyd, then the COVID hoax was going to spare you. And well over a year later, COVID Clay, presiding over the Dallas County Commissioner's Court, was still pushing masks. As soon as Governor Abbott said, we're done in the state of Texas with this foolishness, COVID Clay decides he's going to double and triple down. And there used to be a Republican briefly on this particular class of Dallas County Commissioners, J.J. Koch, and he wouldn't wear the mask because he knew, like anybody with a brain, that the mask was nothing more than just theater. It was just virtue signaling. It did absolutely nothing. It was a total farce. So Koch wasn't wearing the mask at this meeting. Now, the meeting was already underway, and COVID Clay, he was, while telling the public how scary the COVID hoax, farce, nonsense scam was, how bad it was, even though we already had the crap scene on the market, by the way, and anybody who was a true believer was crapsinated, presumably including COVID Clay. But the virus was so scary that you could not have anybody in your vicinity who was unmasked. And COVID Clay stands up and takes a group photo with J.J. Koch, county commissioner, ex-county commissioner. They're standing shoulder to shoulder in the photograph, which I tweeted out, by the way, on X at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. I also tweeted out the video that is going to accompany the sound that I'm going to play with you. This is COVID Clay. Now, 5 minutes after standing shoulder to shoulder with this unmasked individual, this dangerous public health threat, 5 minutes later, he decides that he can no longer remain in his presence because of the public safety and public health threat.
Before we get to the next resolution, it's now past 9:30. Commissioner Koch, you refuse to wear your mask in Scrum. Okay.
Yep, you do not have the authority under the governor's order. In fact, this morning, I went to Starbucks and I have a mask.
Okay.
And if you did things the right way and weren't abusive of your power and very demeaning and unfortunately condescending to your workmates.
Certainly don't mean to be. Would you voluntarily join us in a virtual manner?
And let me go ahead and I'm going to play. I've got the second part of that cut, just a moment here. So COVID Clay, and again, this is August 2021. I'm going back in time. I'm going back, way back in time. This was when Democrats wanted to put you in jail. They wanted to strip you of your job. They were kicking you out of public meetings, even if you were an elected official, if you refused to wear a mask. And now they want to put people in jail who won't take off their mask, which is just so insane. So now J.J. Koch, he says, you know what, I don't really want to go and take this meeting on Zoom. I don't think I need to.
You can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming.
So then COVID Clay, he says, big tough COVID Clay, who's afraid of the fake virus, who, let's be honest, he was just keeping it up to see how much more money he could shake down out of the taxpayers by way of PPP loans for his private business. So he says, oh, yeah, we're going to get serious now. And I don't know why he sounds like he's stuck on the toilet with an impacted bowel movement whenever he speaks, but that's how he talks.
I don't think that's the appropriate thing to do. I don't think you have the authority to order me to do that.
I'm going to ask the bailiff now to clear the courtroom of people who refuse to wear their mask.
People with a brain.
I only see one, and that would be Commissioner Koch. And Commissioner Koch, we can recess for a moment for you to reconnect with us because we don't want you to miss court.
Shut up.
Bailiff, will you please escort Commissioner Koch to his office so that he can join us for court?
And ultimately, Koch complied, and I don't know why. I definitely would have taken an opportunity, I think, if I were in Koch's position, to grandstand, and maybe he would have gotten reelected. Maybe he'd still be in elected politics, or I think he's a judge now, actually. But I think that would have been a good opportunity to give a big middle finger to COVID Clay, the purveyor of the hoax. And, so now he's in Costa Rica. Wouldn't we all like to be in Costa Rica? Wouldn't we all? Oh, it was planned months ago. He didn't know the storm was coming. He's totally prepared. His staff is totally prepared. We don't need the chief elected official who is responsible for emergency and storm management to actually be here. Not when you're a Democrat. We can give you a pass. It's just if you're Ted Cruz, the evil Republican, then we can crap all over him. And by the way, Ted Cruz, he almost got himself into hot water again. He traveled earlier in the week before the storm landed. He was traveling to Laguna Beach, and he made it back on Friday before the storm. He posted a photo of himself out in his front yard in Houston. He made a big show that he wasn't gonna be caught out in Cancun skipping another storm. Not again. Even though he's safe from another election for another few years. And anyway, I heard COVID Clay during the flight that he was chatting it up with the pilot.
Their pilot might be a transgendered witch.
I'm just kidding. If the pilot was a transgendered witch, I'm sure that COVID Clay, being the pandering white Democrat loser that he is, he would have taken every opportunity to get a photo of that, as he likes to do with everybody who's not a white person, just to show how woke and sensitive and inclusive that he is. And I'll end the segment on this note. That's another reason now to take a Democrat primary ballot. I'm almost certain I'm going to take a Democrat primary ballot. There are just too many bad and worse candidates on the Democrat side. And I don't know how far my vote is going to go on the Republican side. I think the Republicans are going to be all right to sort themselves out. But COVID Clay, at least I can blank him if there's not somebody else running in the Democrat side. And I know, okay, you can argue what difference is it going to make, but at least I can blank him, or maybe I'll have a chance to write in Mickey Mouse or something like that if there's no other Democrat running for county judge. And you can argue that's futile, but I have a congressional seat that I have to worry about. I've got Julie Johnson, Colin Allred. Hopefully there's a couple of losers running against both of them. I might have to vote for the loser. I'm assuming it's either going to be Allred or Johnson who ends up winning the seat in both the primary and the general election later this year. But I'd like to get my vote of opposition registered. We got the DA race here. We've got Amber Gibbons, the judge who handed over court proceedings to her clerk or coordinator so that way she could get on the phone with the bank to prevent her Cadillac from getting repossessed. She's running against the Soros-funded incumbent John Cruzette. There's another race on the Democrat side, another reason to take a Democrat ballot. And of course, you've got James Talarico and Jasmine Crockett running for U.S. Senate. But again, if there is a third party there, then you might need to vote for that third party. Vote for the biggest loser. That's my strategy. All around the state, you've got an 8-way race on the Democrat side for the Houston County judge. And also, there are just many different congressional seats. And I think it's worth it. If you're a GOP voter, especially if you're in a blue area, and it's very likely that you're going to end up with a Democrat candidate winning the general election anyway, well, you may as well get in and create some chaos. I would say that's your right as a voter. And vote in the Democrat side, and then you can put the full weight of your vote behind GOP candidates in November. All right, we can talk about the debate a little bit. It was a 1-hour debate, and it was held on Saturday. And, okay, we can argue. We didn't know for certain that there was going to be a storm, go figure, at the end of January, whether in Texas or anywhere else. But these two candidates, Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, I find that just really cowardly when they organize debates on Saturdays or Friday nights. And they're certainly not the first politicians to do that. I talked about it on a recent episode of the podcast. But what are you running from? What are you hiding from? Don't you want to get your message out to the widest possible audience and have a prime time debate? And I know, obviously, there's social media and there's the internet, and people are going to watch it at their own leisure anyway, but it was still just bizarre. And there's one big cut, I would say, that has been circulating most widely of James Talarico. He said this earlier in the debate, and it's just, it is, how do I put this? It is holding on like old milk sitting outside of the fridge, this cut. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. I'll play the moderator's question, and then you can hear James Talarico's response.
How do you balance your feelings toward ICE versus the people you would represent who support deporting undocumented immigrants? You have 30 seconds.
So my family is from the border. My mom grew up in Laredo, Texas. I feel like Texans understand this issue of immigration more so than people in other states because we live with it, both the benefits and the challenges. So what I've said is that our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front and a lock on the door. We can welcome immigrants who want to live the American dream.
Our southern border should be a big welcome mat with a great big porch. And a lot of Republican-leaning people on the internet, they ended the cut there, and they didn't finish his whole statement, which he added the piece about the lock on the door. Do you think he really believes that? Do you really think James Talarico thinks that we should have a lock on the door to the southern border? I don't think so. I don't think any Democrats believe that. But he just threw that in there again under this guise of being the reasonable, centrist, moderate candidate who's really going to be representing all Texans. I don't believe that for a second. And, again, this is just the delusion of two Democrat candidates who think they have a shot at being the next U.S. senator from Texas. Maybe I should just say one, because I don't really think that Jasmine Crockett thinks she has a shot. I think she knows she's got a good shot of getting into a paid regular television gig or something in the media if in all likelihood she fails here. James Talarico, maybe he believes that he's got a better shot, or maybe it's more likely, before running for the U.S. Senate and before appearing on Joe Rogan, he was a no-name rep out of the Texas legislature. He's my age. He was in Teach for America, which I've since found out I also was in Teach for America. And that's a launching pad for a lot of people to get into politics, and obviously it was for James Talarico. And in any case, what I was just thinking of? Obviously, most people in Texas support Donald Trump. He's won the state 3 times. And this was Trump at the White House in the press room just last week. This is what I think a lot more Americans and a lot more Texans, this is where their head is at in terms of immigration.
People, vicious, many of them murderers. These are all out of Minnesota, just Minnesota. I say, why don't you talk about that more? Because people don't know. Do you want to live with these people?
Trump is holding up all of the, not mugshots, but at least photographs of all of these vicious, violent criminals that ICE has picked up, just in the state of Minnesota, by the way.
international murder. These are people that are if they're apprehended and either put in jails in their country from where they came, and the countries respect us, and so they actually put them there. In the old days, they didn't respect our country. Biden wouldn't do this because he let them all in. You know, if you didn't have open border policies of Biden, none of this, all of the time that we spend talking about Minnesota and everything else, most of them are coming from out of the country.
Yeah, and the open border policy that James Talarico, in the unlikely event that he's elected to the U.S. Senate, that he would like to continue. And he thinks that most people in Texas would like to continue having an open border, an unprotected border. And of course, on Saturday, that was the day that in the morning in Minnesota, ICE shot to death the nurse, the peaceful nurse who was just out in the middle of the streets in Minnesota armed, and it ended up being shot to death by ICE. So both Jasmine Crockett and James Talarico, they were able to pander to that situation in their opening statement. So there's another reason why Minnesota is relevant. I'm not even going to get into the whole ICE situation. And now Democrats, oh, well, he had a permit. He had a permit to carry a gun. Have you ever heard a Democrat defending the right to carry a weapon with a permit? Have you ever heard that before? No, not before this peaceful nurse who treated veterans in the ICU went out and got himself shot to death by ICE. He was just defending a woman. Boy, are these white libs getting a real shock. They thought they were exempt from getting shot to death in the streets by police, by law enforcement. And I can tell you there are some people of color who are pointing out with less than sensitivity that they know all about it. They know all about it. And they don't recommend it.
Do we know how to use it, Sheriff? Whether we pulling it up or we doing something else with it.
That's right, Jasmine. All right. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I am your host, Bronan. Please make sure that you like, download, subscribe to the Real Texas Radio Podcast from wherever you stream, and follow me on X at RTR_Bronan, RTR_Bronan, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Real Texas Radio Podcast.